Good afternoon. Would you say that stablecoins are the sort of good end of crypto assets?
So stablecoin, if under regulation and if stable, is something that can have benefits in terms of payment systems. There are some good use cases there for efficiency of payments, particularly cross-border payments. And we have seen through some of the sandbox work that I've talked about before about some of the utility and use cases that some of that payments technology, the DLT type technology, could bring for cross-border payments. I think what is important for a stablecoin, which the UK does not have a regulatory framework for a stablecoin at the moment, if that is introduced, which government has signalled that it will be, it will require a safe regulatory regime to make sure that that coin is stable.
And with regards to the FCA's sort of new duty to consider competition, do you think that having a strong regulatory regime for stablecoin could give UK PLC a sort of global leading edge in cryptocurrencies, or is it not that grand?
I think I go back to my comment on our really strong commitment as an organisation to support innovation in financial services. We have done a lot of that already in relation to the 56 firms that we have supported in relation to DLT type technologies, and we are really strongly committed to working with Bank of England and Treasury in relation to how to design a stablecoin regime that would ensure innovation with high standards, so ensure that there is a system there that protects consumers, ensures the market works well, but also then has the benefits that can come with a stablecoin.
I just recall from having been on the Treasury Committee between 2010 and 2014 that the Chancellor then, George Osborne, was very keen that the UK should sort of lead the world in this emerging cryptocurrency, and that the Bank of England should come up with a regulatory framework so that it would be a real core strength. I mean, that's been either a very, very slow burn, or we simply deprioritised it. I mean, in the context of international competitiveness, is this something where we're playing catch up, something where we have a leading edge? What's your view from the point of view of UK PLC and our global financial services sector?
What I would say is ultimately it's a matter for Parliament and for government in terms of the ambition for the UK in terms of crypto, in terms of stablecoin, in terms of central bank digital currencies. What our role as a regulator is to make sure that we are supporting that but with high standards. We think that is the key ingredients for ensuring that that there is competitiveness, long-term competitiveness in the UK. We have already sought to get ahead of that through calling together our policy sprint that I talked about earlier in May this year, so way in advance of any consultations on a broader regime, a broader crypto regulatory regime, looking to bring partners together over the course of 2 days in person and then followed up by virtual in terms of trying to understand what the core ingredients would be. So our role as a regulator is to make sure that we stand ready to support that. We have a good track record, a really strong track record in terms of the sandbox and the innovation pathways type service, and we're proactively looking at what the core ingredients of a regulatory regime could look like, both for the UK but informed by international standards too.
So we also sit on the FSB, where it has all of those countries, and then we sit on the subgroup for stablecoins. So all those countries in a room where we're discussing with them alongside them. So in terms of the competitive, we are a member of that group. And the work that I described earlier in terms of IOSCO, where you've got the 130 countries, that is considered that piece of work as well in terms of regulation. So just to try and sort of answer your question around the international point, we're at both of those groups at the same time.
Okay, so what I'm really trying to get at is how proactive are you going to be? You've said it's for Parliament and government to decide, and then you sort of try and get ahead of it and anticipate. But will it not be for the FCA to sort of lead the charge and say, actually, this is the direction of travel globally, this is, stable coin or indeed a central bank digital currency, these are the way forward because it's going to reduce transaction costs and friction costs and make businesses more competitive and exports easier and reduce money laundering? Are these things that you are proactively considering yourselves? Do you have task forces doing that? Or are you simply saying, well, if the government wants us to do it, then we'll do a jolly good job of it?
I would say that we've been proactive already. So we're working very closely with Treasury. We're working very closely with the Bank of England. We're members of the Crypto Assets Task Force. We've already called together back in May this year the policy sprint. We've already sought to consult back in January this year on what the rules for financial promotions would be for crypto. We're already looking to strengthen our teams in relation to people in order that when the financial promotions come in that we have people ready to assess applications. So I think we are being proactive and bringing the successful regulatory sandbox type approaches already, notwithstanding the fact that it will ultimately be for government and for Parliament to then decide how to bring that regime in.
Okay, and so can you explain the sort of regulation that stablecoin will be subject to if they're defined as a payment system?
So the key elements to consider, and this is where we go back to same risk, same regulatory outcome, there will be the need to look at valuation. There will be the need to look at what happens in the event of failure, how are client assets protected, how do conflicts of interest work, very much the key ingredients that you would expect in other parts of the financial services sector. That same risk, same regulatory outcome is very much not only words that we speak in terms of the UK, but is very much the strong international consensus in how to regulate all things crypto.
And so it would receive the same FSCS compensation access, would it, if it becomes a regulated payment system?
I think that would be something to be considered as part of the future consultations that will occur. It will be important to consult on that and then to determine exactly whether that is in scope or not.
What would your expectation be? I mean, if I'm going to go and, spend stable coins rather than cash, would you expect there to be some sort of compensation scheme available to retail users?
I think this will be something that will be important for government to consider. I think it will come to how widespread an introduction do people expect stablecoin to be. Your very question suggests that if it is to be introduced as a sort of like-for-like with fiat currency, then ought it not to have the same protections, and that is something that I'm sure will be very live in any consultation. You
must have a view as the FCA. There must be sort of certain expectations that you would have to ensure that if it was to be introduced as something sitting alongside fiat currency, and you've got older people, people who are less familiar with such concepts, trying to use it or being persuaded to use it by scammers and so on, wouldn't you expect as an absolute bare minimum some kind of retail compensation scheme to apply to it? You must have a view, surely.
I don't want to front run too much what a consultation and what a view might look like. I think what will be important is our statutory objectives very much ensuring that consumers are protected and that there's market integrity and promoting competition in the interests of consumers, and those will very much feature.
Okay, I mean, do you think that the FCA has the resources to be able to create or to support the development of stablecoin or other cryptocurrencies?
So what I would say is the resourcing around what that would look like in terms of regulating crypto is something that is very much in focus. I talked already about building our capacity to deal with the financial promotions coming into our remit, and that is something that we are looking at very closely, and we will want to make sure that we are ready to support that. We will want to make sure that there is the right lead-in time, both for firms at any point that crypto has that broad regulatory regime, but also the FCA in terms of how we're resourced and organised. Matthew is here today next to me as our new Director of Payments and Digital Assets. The very creation of a new directorate within our supervision, policy and competition function for payments and digital assets shows our signals that we believe that this is important to resource and to strengthen, and bringing together the digital assets with payments is quite deliberate, because some of the risks and issues and supervisory tools will be broadly similar between both constituent parts. But it will be important both for firms in terms of any new application that they have sufficient lead and time to get ready, and also that we are getting ready too in terms of recruiting.
Okay, final question. Do you agree with those who speak up for stablecoins that they would provide new channels for financial inclusion of people who are currently excluded from much financial services?
I think the financial inclusion question is quite difficult. There are some good use cases in terms of cross-border payments. So we've seen some much cheaper ability to transmit funds from one country to another through the use of DLT type technologies. Whether stablecoin and crypto is the answer to financial inclusion, I think that is very difficult to say. I think our recent research shows that 96% of people have a UK bank account, and currently the way in which the system is set up, normally you would expect to have a bank account in order to participate in crypto. So I'm not sure that crypto or stablecoin at the moment is necessarily the answer to sort of financial inclusion issues.